Hello there, and welcome to episode 6 of Battle of the Pilots. I am Graham Ruddings, and I am joined by my good friend and erstwhile Shadow Mask consumer, Adrian Mills.
I am. True.
In this podcast, we reach into the extensive back catalogue of TV shows over the last 50 years and pluck out a couple of pilot episodes for a head-to-head battle. To ensure we can crown a champion, we take a clumsy, dispassionate, and fingery look at both chosen TV show pilot episodes, discussing their relative merits or demerits and scoring them out of 10 for selected key themes and or categories such as story, characters, costumes, music, visuals, and influence to eventually settle on an overall score. In the end, only one pilot show will emerge as what is best in life, while the other will be crushed and driven before us before spending time on the Tree of Woe.
It will.
For this sixth episode, we have chosen two somewhat obscure action hero-based shows from the dark depths of the 90s TV land. Yes, you've guessed it, or maybe not. This week, the undoubtedly roid-raged infused sword-wielding bodybuilding muscles of Conan the Adventurer go loincloth to bycocket hat with a cross, longbow, and arrow crammed quivers of the legend of William Tell. Let battle commence.
Let battle commence, indeed. With these two shows, I don't know. I'd never heard of them.
No, I've heard of the people in them to some extent, and there's some crazy stories about these shows. I'm sure we're going to discover this as we go through. Some things I've got some factoids about the legend of William Tell that may blow your mind. Oh,
I'm looking forward to it. I could find barely anything out about bloody Conan, but you know, it is what it is. These are what an odd pairing, but you know, both out within a year of each other. Do you want me to sort of give some quick praise?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, I was going to say the general running order of these things is Adrian's going to give us a pilot plot summary as opposed to a brief, just so we know what we're talking about. Give us the skinny, and then we'll go into the various different categories. For this particular episode, we've got story, characters, costumes and sets, music, sound effects, cinematography and special effects. God help us with that one. And reception and influence. So good selection of categories to go from. Adrian, please tell us the plot summaries of these two legendary shows.
Right, okay, yeah. Well, The Legend of William Tell. Well, according to Wikipedia, it's a 16-part television fantasy drama series produced in 1998 by Cloud9 Productions in New Zealand. The basic premise of the series, a crossbow-wielding rebel defies a corrupt governor, and the name of the title character were adopted from the traditional story. But the series was set in a fantasy world and featured supernatural themes. What are supernatural themes?
I think that's another phrase for saying smoke machines, I think, and caves.
and incredible hats.
Yes, the hats. They specialise in hat wearing that.
Conan the Adventurer, on the other hand, is an American television live-action adventure series. It was produced by Max A. Keller and Micheline Keller from 1997 to 98, loosely based on the fantasy hero Conan the Barbarian. The show premiered September 22nd, 1997, comprised 22 episodes, filmed mainly in Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco, Mexico.
Okay.
Keller Entertainment Group, the same production company responsible for the series Tarzan, The Epic Adventures, and Acapulco Heat, or Acapulco HEAT, continues to market and distribute the series worldwide. I don't know who to.
No, and how they're getting around the whole everything. Every one of these episodes for all of this is all available on YouTube as well.
Yeah, they are. That's where we watch them.
The entire series, yep. So if you're really feeling fruity, go and do that.
You can if you want to watch what we've watched. And,
And you might, and we'll go into the various iterations of the different kinds of things there are, because there are numerous variations of this. We'll put the links to the appropriate ones that we've watched in our show notes. So if you really feel like you want to explore the pilots, just like we did, and feel the same pain, just like we did, then you can go and do that. Anyway, now that's all said, you know what these are about. Let's get on with our very first category. And Adrian, you're going to begin this by telling us about the story and characters of Conan the Adventurer.
Dun, 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 dun. Well, you won't hear any of that. So
Okay.
get that out of your mind. So starting off, well, we do actually get the usual kind of Conan spiel. Not the same. It's different. Read by someone different. It's not. Let me tell you, it's a different feel, different words,
Bit long,
different spiel. It goes on for ages. Yeah, it goes on over the credits. It's like, oh my god, all right, you get it. In fact, it's weird. It's inspired by the book telling of Conan's coming after the ocean swallowed Atlantis. And there was an age untold of where Conan. It tells that Conan was a lover, friend, and hero.
Ooh.
Ha! Anyway, once the credits are out the way, well, before the credits are out the way, we see two large phallic towers. That's the first shot. There's two phallic towers. Within these phallic towers, I presume, not sure which one, there's a wizard's lair. We know it's a wizard's lair. It's lots of glass pots bubbling with coloured liquids and dead animals in cages. So it's clearly a wizard's lair. Okay. This then segs into some dreamy action shots of Conan.
It does.
Played by Ralph Muller. Before we cut back to the wizard's lair, and the wizard Hissar Zul, he's played by Jeremy Kemp.
Bless you.
Yeah, Hissar Zul, played by Jeremy Kemp, who you may remember. He's a stalwart British actor, been in loads of things. But I always remember him as the General Strom, for whatever he was, from Top Secret.
Oh, of course it was him. I wondered where I'd seen him. It's been bugging me. Thank you for that.
It's him. He wakes with the start from this dream of Conan. He's the one dreaming of Conan. Does. Oh, and he's like, oh. It's like, he climbs out of bed. And as he climbs out of bed, two comely women enter for no reason.
They really are.
It's basically, look, we've got a cleavage budget and we're going to use it.
They really have.
These women come in and the wizard, he's not best pleased with them. It's like, what do you want?
He's quite rude.
He is. They're like, well, we heard you crying out. We thought you want something. Get out.
Get out and stop thinking.
Yeah, you're just supposed to be standing in the corridor. It's your job. After that, he puts on his best indoor hat and cloak.
There's so many indoor. I've never seen so many cloaks and hats in two shows in my life.
But this is the one with the biggest collar and upturned brim on the hat that I've seen in quite some time. That really collar is a thing of legend. And he proceeds to talk to a skull in a font.
He does.
It's like basically like it becomes like a trapdoor.
It really is actually, yeah.
It becomes like trapdoor because it's like Burke and Boney.
It is.
But it's like the magic mirror in Sleeping Beauty because the skull tells Hissar that Conan's coming to kill him. It's like, you're dying. He can't point
it's pretty blunt.
He is. He's like, and he's going to become king, and he's like, I'm king here. Not anymore. Not for much longer. But if you go kill him first, that'll be all right. And he's like, oh, yeah, why didn't I think of that?
You did.
You're an idiot. That would be the first thing to think of, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you want to stay in power. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I suppose if you've got a skull in a font to advise you on this shit, then you can, you don't need to think for yourself, do you?
And all those liquids in bubbly bottles,
yeah. So Hissar agrees to this and just wanders off. He just wanders off. Where's he gone?
He does.
Skull's just left there. What? Somewhere else. I have no idea where. Conan is hacking away at a dead deer. But a hooded figure tries to steal some of his meat. He catches them and is amazed that it's a girl, which he says twice. But she shows him that she is a woman by displaying some cleavage.
I'm sensing a theme.
She's like, you're a girl and you're almost dead. She's like, I'm no girl, I'm a woman. It's like, it's like, you are a woman, also nearly dead. But he also wants to know why she stole his meat. That's what he asks. He says, why did you steal my meat? I was like, what am I watching?
Get off my meat.
Anyway, this is Tamara. When we're seeing her, Tamara. Yeah, she's played by Kimberly Kelly, or Kim Kelly in this. Turns out her village is starving. And he even comments on it. He goes, well, you're not. Which made me laugh. Yeah. Which made me laugh loads. I was like, I reckon that was improvised and they had no extra film to sort of stop it. And they need help because of the evil Hissar Zul stealing all their crops because they are a village of farmers. Weird, actually, because they live near a village in a load of mountains with no farmland in any sight, in any direction. So I don't know what they're farming. But she convinces him with a bit of flirting to come to the village as the rest of his meat has been nicked by her companions while they were chatting. He's not very good, Conan, at this point.
No.
So poor Conan, he's got no choice but to agree. The glint, though, in Tamara's eye as he walks off, shows she's eyeing a bit of Conan's other meat at this point.
Their eyes met over the meat. It's all meat. It's a meat cube, literally.
Absolutely. Anyway, cutting back to Hisar, his council with his pet wizard Yara and General Goroth. That's Stephen Matilla and Andrew Divoff, respectively. He orders Goroth to go and find Conan and kill him. Okay. Then he has a chat with Yara, not before ordering his dwarf companion, Oatley, to leave them. He's a bit browbeaten. I'm not sure why he's here, the dwarf. He just doesn't really do a lot. He just gets told off all the time. He must
feature later, I think, a lot.
Well, he does, yeah. He becomes part of the crew. Back at the village, Conan enjoys the fruits of his kill with the villagers, who all look surprisingly well fed. Despite having very little,
and stealing food,
and he meets Mickey Rooney, who's the village elder.
He is
the one and only village elder. He is. Conan and Tamara have a bit of a chat. They found out that Conan has come from Samaria and escaped, and after some history of Conan, there's some dancing. And Tamara flirts a bit more before we see some soldiers heading into the village, and there's a big fight. There's a bit of fighting ensues after this. Conan weirdly pins one to a hut. He puts him on a hut.
Yeah.
Just hangs him on a hut for no reason. That's the one bit that stood out to me about that fight. It's like Conan picks
made me
up
laugh.
I was like, and he's like,
it just made me laugh loads.
Yeah, I was like, what have you done that for? Just stab him.
Really weird,
Tamara,
that bit.
Yeah, Tamara gets knocked out with a head injury. But the farmers in the village prove too strong for the trained and mounted knights. That's like, good lord. Are these really farmers? There's no farms. They're dead hard. Are these really farmers? They're dead
They're all
well fed. I don't believe this for an instant. And they leg it. So the soldiers leg it. Conan nurses Tamara back to health. There's some more flirting. She offers to bear Conan some sons. They've just met.
They haven't met long, have they?
They've met that morning. Had a bit of a chat. She's like...
It's a short jump from stealing someone's meat to offering to give them children.
Yeah. Think I could sire some of your sons? Okay.
Stop stealing meat.
So at this point, the kiss, she falls asleep. Now, I thought at this point, he just lays down next to her and goes to sleep with her. She's got a head wound. It's a bit dangerous. She might be concussed.
He sleeps with his legs sticking out of his house.
Yeah, it's dead weird. What do I know, though? I'm no medicine person. So the soldiers who fail to take the village are then killed by Goroth, the general, as punishment.
Aye.
And he then sends more men to take Conan. And they're after his sword for some reason, but I don't think it's this sword they're after. We'll find a better sword later on. Back at the village, there are discussions around gods and perhaps moving before Conan hears the enemy coming in a great bit of smell the fart acting. He's like, looks at
it really
he's
is.
Like, ooh, just is looking around. It's brilliant. And then the soldiers turn up. There's more fighting. Mickey Rooney is killed and for some reason declares Conan his king before dying. Okay.
Okay.
I suppose you say anything when you're on your deathbed, don't you?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Barely know him, but okay.
Yeah. So Conan, they're holding their own. Yara enters the fray and befuddles Conan with his magic jewel. He's like, oh. And Conan, in a hilarious moment, falls onto Otley, the dwarf. The soldiers set the village on fire, and Yara tells Goroth it will take Tamara and Conan with him. He takes them to a slaver for Conan to fight in the gladiator pits, and he gives Tamara to the slaver, who happens to have a really well-fitting dress with lots of cleavage on display.
Yeah, it's a very prom dress, I would say, almost.
Absolutely, yeah. Here he meets Vulcar and Zeben before going out to fight. He wins. He kills the guy, and then he's up against Vulcar, but they've actually hatched a plot, or they hatch a plot. Somewhere there's a plot that's been hatched to escape during this fight. So they escape. He escapes with Vulcar and Zeben, and they leg it out. Conan kills everyone, ends up somehow in the top tier of the stadium. I'm not quite sure how he got up there. He just sort of appears there after stabbing someone. And then they leg it. With Zeben and Vulcar, and they basically form a little team. Not for very long, though, because Otley turns up here at this point as well. Tells him he should be part of the team, but like, okay. So Conan trusts him and heads off with Otley. But Zeben convinces Vulcar not to go with them through the use of sign language, because did I mention he's a mute? And he just goes, I have no idea what he says, because there's no subtitles or anything. And it's like, what is going on? Why have they gone off? What's going on here? They offer in an opposite direction. Anyway, Conan and Otley walking along. Conan's drawn to a mysterious cave up a cliffside. And they go into this cave and he finds an ancient sword being held by a monstrous skeletal creature sat on a throne. Conan takes a sword, and after taking too much time swinging it about, Beastmaster style, the entrance is blocked by a boulder. Okay. At this point, the creature wakes up, tries to hug Conan to death with its four arms. Never a good thing. Conan struggles, lots of guns.
Ooh.
Lots of that, and manages to sort of push it away and hack off its arms with the new sword, and hacks its head off. So it properly kills it this time. They then wander out. It's not clear how they get past the boulder.
They just do.
They're just wandering out now. And then, for some reason, the sword starts glowing, and Conan sees the face of Richard Burton in the sword.
So weird.
In one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in a TV show in quite some time.
So random.
He looks like the son in Teletubbies.
He does. Which he is not proud of as Richard Burton.
No, and it's the face of Richard Burton, and he tells him he's Crom. And he tells him that the sword is the sword of Atlantis, and that Conan is the chosen one, and that his parents are okay and proud of him. And thus ends part one. This is part one of The Heart of the Elephant. Conan is a bit miffed at this point, sort of thing, and I actually do agree. I actually like this bit because Conan's like, "Why did you kill my parents?" And Crom's like, "It's all right, they're with me now." It says, "I'd preferred them still alive, you know."
Yeah.
It's like they're annoyed. And I actually did quite like that bit. I thought it was quite funny.
Yeah.
But Richard Burton's just like, you're the chosen one. Bugger off. Conan looks a bit befuddled, and it ends. And that's it, really. What's odd here, they've turned the Conan mythos, and it never was before, into another chosen one trope.
Yeah, which is odd.
Because it was always supposed to be that he became a king by his own hand, tread the skulls under his feet, and and all that sort of thing, wear the crown upon a troubled brow, all that kind of stuff. But here, they've changed it into that chosen one, which doesn't sit right with me. I'm like, Conan was never a chosen one. He was just a force of nature going through the land, and eventually worked his way up, killed everyone. Anyway, I'll just see part two because we're only looking at part one primarily here. But part two concludes the story. Conan finds the heart of the elephant, which is a literal heart of the elephant. It's a rubber elephant sat there that talks to him. And it's very bizarre. After he kills a CG spider in a fight, and then he gets this heart of the elephant, which allows him to put some ointment on some egg or something. I don't know. It all gets a bit weird in that second part. He meets up with the thief queen Corella, who I quite liked. Although as soon as she meets him, she wants to sleep with him.
She does.
It's like, no. He just biffs her off. It's like, wait, I'm in love with Tamara. Tamara gets killed, just a bit of spoiler there, by General Goroth. And Conan, and then Conan takes his revenge to him. The part where Conan finds her and she dies in his arms and he lets out a mighty no is very funny. Hisazel makes off like a bandit when he's like, and the team set off. There's Otley, Zebun, and Volkar, or whatever at this point. And I think the Thief Queen Corella teams up with them later on. But that's it. I mean, that's it. They head off for more high adventures and more sort of, Hisazel is the bad guy through the series. That's this. So, having watched things like Manimal, Automan, and Blue Thunder for this show, I've seen worse openers, I have to say.
Yeah.
Some of the action is not good. There's a really awkward bit where he's giving out orders where to go for the big fight, and Tamara won't go in the hut. And it's clearly that either one of them forgot their lines, because it's dead obvious, because they're like, it's dead still. He's like, go in the hut. No. I told you can't. Then he just picks her up and puts her in the hut 2 feet away with a big open door. Like, she could just walk out. There's something likable, though, about Mueller's Conan. He's all right. He's not a bad Conan, actually. He's okay. He's certainly got the physique. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's on display all the time. The following year from this, he's Hagen in Gladiator.
Oh, of course he is, yeah.
Maximus Gladiator companion that's not Jimon Hunsu. The other one. So he's certainly trying to channel Schwarzenegger in his portrayal. I found I quite liked him by the end of the first episode. He was all right. He kind of grew on me a bit. He's quite funny in places. Hisazel, ably played by the stalwart British actor Jeremy Kemp. Unfortunately, this was his last role before he retired from acting. So he died about late 2019 or something. He's passed away since then. But he's clearly just hamming it up, talking to a floating skull for most of this. But, what a way to go. Andrew Divoff as Gorath makes a decent bad guy for the double opener. He, if you recognised him, would go on to play Mikhail in Lost.
Yeah, of course it is.
As well. Less good, though. Kim Kelly as Tamara. She's okay. She's a couple of good bits where she fights and shows some grit, but she's clearly been hired to display some cleavage and simper over Conan. So she doesn't get a lot to do. But it's all, and it's all for nothing, though, because like I said, halfway through, she shoved in a dress and becomes mere window dressing at that point. So
yeah, pretty much.
So in all, in terms of story and characters, I didn't mind this. It's suitably Conan-ish enough. There's a couple of decent big fights for TV that aren't too terrible. There's a bit of magic. There's a bit of this, and there's what you'd expect in a sort of Xena Hercules knockoff kind of way. Which clearly is. Maybe because the second part, I thought the second part was better. watching them both. But as a setup, I think this gets things going. It had a couple, like I said, decent large-scale fights, kills off Mickey Rooney, sets up the general story and characters fairly well. I gave this, maybe I'm a bit harsh, but I gave it a 6 overall. But that's what I thought about the story and Conan. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I only had a few notes to that. It made me laugh loads that the image of Richard Burton had a credit in the opening. I was like, what? How's that going to work? And then it's a CG version of him. I'm like, he wouldn't approve. No one would have believed it, and he'd have been right. Mickey Rooney being in it was interesting. The fact that it was produced by the guy that did produced From Beyond blew my mind.
Yeah, Brian Yuzna, yeah.
Yeah, so as for the characters, I liked the Conan. I thought the Conan was all right. He plays it pretty well. The fact that they were flirting over stolen meat made me laugh for ages and ages. There's a lot of villages getting attacked. It's a Conan show. You know, that is the style of every single type one of these shows. At some point, the villages always get attacked. It's like, someone attacked a village. Someone's attacked a village in the last 10 minutes. But the attack on the village is stupid in the first instance, but okay, it is what it is. The relationships develop rapidly in this show, in this version though. So
they certainly do.
Like you said, Tamara goes from stealing his meat to wanting his meat in about 2 scenes. It's like, goodness me. And you're declaring love for each other. And, but all right, the accelerated versions of these things. And, why did they dress her like a prom queen? I don't know, but they did. So, yeah. And then halfway through, there was another village attacked scene as well and burned. And I actually thought it was pretty effective when it was doing some of those moments. Certainly more effective than some of the other shows that I've seen of that type. It's very Hercules and Xena and Robin Hood and a few other shows that are around at this time. It's perhaps not as developed as those because those had a much richer tapestry of characters being based on Greek myth. You can go in all sorts of directions with that. But that said, there are daft characters, but I don't know. They're obviously really trying hard to keep it in the world of Conan, and I liked it for that. The story was in the kind of realm of Conan. It was, at least Conan was the central thing, and things happened around him. And, they shouldn't have made him kind of the chosen one. That was a bit daft. There was no need for that. No. And then, of course, to top it all off, you had the weird CG face of Richard Burton appear. I was like, what the hell? And then, he had a fight with that skeleton creature. I was like, all right. But what blows my mind is that this, 1997? So we're not that far off from Lord of the Rings, for goodness sake. But all right, this is what it is. TV money and all that. But this shows you how categorically different TV has become, thanks to things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and things like that. That this kind of show made now is your Game of Thrones and things like that. And just the sheer difference between that and this is just, it just shows you where the money production started to go, really. So, but I actually really liked this. I thought it was I thought the characters were very Conan-like, and the women in it are stupid, and I hope they develop that into something better. But they were funny, and there were funny moments in it, and there was sort of tangible Conan-y qualities about it. I give it a 7.
Ooh, fair enough.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. I thought it was okay. So early doors scores there for Conan. Now, let me tell you of the legend of William Tell then, Adrian.
Oh, please do.
Just in case you didn't know who William Tell was, he's actually a legendary Swiss folk hero. He was celebrated for his remarkable archery skills, something which you won't see a lot of in the version we're going to watch. And his defiance against tyranny. The original is set in the 14th century. It's in the Swiss canton of Uri, where the Austrian Habsburgs have imposed harsh rules. Essentially, it's the principal legend of William Tell is around the fact that the village that he's in is usurped by a local governor called Gessler, who makes them all bow to a hat. And then he gets into some kind of, I know it's stupid, but that's what he does. William Tell refuses, and he's given a choice: shoot the apple off your son's head or face execution. Everyone that kind of knows that bit of the story. Now you stretch that into a TV show, I don't know. I guess what you have to do is add fantasy and stuff like that to it. All right. But William Tell actually became a powerful symbol of resistance and liberty. Okay, so he endures. We'll talk about that later. Now, this was a Cloud9 Productions, and Cloud9 Productions is a chap called Raymond Thompson. I'll go into more about Raymond Thompson when we talk about Reception Influence, but what's interesting to know about Raymond Thompson is he was the ex-head of BBC Drama and oversaw shows like Howard's Way, Bergerac, and The House of Elliot, and then went on to form this particular company, Cloud9, to make shows that were specifically targeted at kind of, I guess you call them youth audience, young audiences, or youngish, sort of Disney-esque qualities. And it really shows in the sort of output. Anyway, so let's talk about the story and characters then of the legend of William Tell. Okay, well, William Tell is played by a chap called Kieran Hutchinson. He was in The Adventures of Swiss Family Robinson, which was another Cloud9 show, One Tree Hill, another Cloud9 show, I believe, maybe. And he was also in one single episode of Xena. There you go. And as the other main characters I'll go through as we go through, but there's also a character called Zax, who's played by Andrew Binns. He's also served time in Hercules, Xena. He was in Power Rangers and in something called American Playboy, the Hugh Hefner story. So anyway, we'll go through all of the other characters as we go through. So let's talk about what happens in the show. So in the first episode of William Tell, titled Shaitana's Eye, the series opens in the mystical land of, I kept saying Kale, but it's pronounced Kayla. So it's pronounced Kayla. And with Creel, the evil wizard, acquiring the apparently legendary Shaitana's Eye right at the beginning. At this point, it's not clear exactly what it's for, aside from making an oversized pendant glow and shooting out balls of energy to stun or kill people. Jury's out on that. Creel is the advisor to Zax, a somewhat well-spoken kind of Oxbridge graduate who has some kind of nefarious mission, though at this point it isn't clear what that is, who they are, what they're doing. Anyway, Shaitan's Eye is the key to power, and in this kind of show, that usually spells trouble for villagers. Anyway, all of this is oddly intercut with the face of someone looking troubled, who then appears on a snowy peak at what was clearly the day they hired the helicopter for the flybys. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later, and that person. We then meet William Tell, who is doing some kind of target practice with his trusty crossbow. It's probably the one of only 3 occasions you've seen him use one. It's a small crossbow, so I don't really know how powerful that would be, and he never seems to be cocking it, so I don't know what kind of crossbow it is either. Anyway, he shoots an apple and then shoots it again with another arrow. William Tell is good with arrows. That's all you need to know about that.
He is.
Then, of course, we see a village attacked by horse-riding warriors with plastic swords. For my money, it looked more like they were trashing someone's LARPing event, really. But, evil is doing evil stuff. All the while, the mysterious woman in white watches and winces. She does that a lot in this show. Mm-hmm. Then we're at the Citadel, home of the king and queen of what? We don't know. And who they are, we never find out. And Princess Vara, which looks a bit like a badly made circus tent in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, Zax, Creel and his army of, Zaxians attack the king and queen with their 5-man army and quickly overthrow the Citadel using the power of the eye. And then oddly, Zax introduces himself twice, which is really weird because he introduces himself when he walks up and then he introduces himself again. It's like, what's going on? And even though the princess somehow knows who he is because she goes, oh, look, it's Zax. She immediately forgets that. Krill uses the power of the eye to cause trouble and kills everyone at least twice, all 5 of them. And meanwhile, in the peaceful settlement of, something or other, William is having a rest and eating an apple. Because, of course, he's famous for his use and adoption of apples. And living the Carly version of the Vida Loca with his pet dog, Alvar. Then his father, who was apparently at the Citadel and escaped somehow, has staggered home injured and gives a grim account of the day. Creel and Zax are back, and so is the darkness, and they have the eye. None of this is good, and none of it seems to bother William Tell whatsoever.
No. Why would
Meanwhile, Zax threatens the king and queen and takes over the Citadel, and I'm assuming the power of Kayla, which seems alarmingly small and distributed to one village and a small tent and some caves. Finally, the woman in white, also known as Calem the Oracle, visits William and family and sets the scene. William is destined to be a great warrior, but he must defeat Zax, take back Shaitana's eye, and rescue Princess Vara. The Oracle uses her magic, which to me looks like a tattoo of a penis on a wrist, but okay, and converts a loaf of bread into a magic bowl, which is really random.
I'd rather have the bread. That's of no use to anyone. What am I going to put in the bowl?
And then shows William a vision of an arrow pendant, a talisman, indeed the talisman of Kayla. And it's also a crystal arrow. Pick a name. Pick a damn name for the thing. And she has a mini version which she wants William to wear, only he won't for some reason. Point blank refuses. No, I'm not wearing that pendant. No.
I wouldn't either.
Then the home is threatened by Zaxian soldiers, and William is told he must flee and follow his destiny and save the kingdom and leave his mum and dad to their fate. Then there's just shots of mountains. You get a lot of that in this.
Oh, absolutely.
We segue to a lot of New Zealand mountains. This is all filmed in New Zealand.
Yeah.
A brief interlude with Zax and Creel hypnotizing the Princess Vara in a really weird scene into thinking they are there to protect the kingdom, or of course using the magic of the eye. Ooh. So William heads out on his quest and immediately falls foul of a cannibal cave vampire. Doesn't last long. Inside the cave,
that bloody vampire.
And a prisoner of someone with very cheap Halloween fangs. He meets Kobold, some kind of child thief who is caged. William and Kobold manage to break free with such cunning as undoing the ropes and breaking the padlock with a sword and firing some kind of webbing sort of netting-based crossbow bolt at the vampire creature, which he gets from nowhere.
Yeah, nowhere.
William also at this point discovers that Kobold has no legs. You couldn't make it up, but that's the way it is.
You have to carry me.
I've got no legs. It's like, right, okay. Meanwhile, Creel does some spooky magic with Zax and the eye, pouring what looks like cheap vodka onto an electric appliance. Very dangerous. Anyway, the plan is to use Princess Vara to persuade the people of Kayla to accept him as ruler. All right, that's the plan.
All right.
Hey, William and Kobold then see a magical and well-lit goat, or goat-like animal for some reason.
Yeah.
before finding some more nefarious-looking caves. And again, upon entering, William is double-crossed by a kobold and is then held prisoner by his father, Grimstar, and put to work in the mines. In these mines, William meets Teyuet, Aruna, Seth, and Leon, all prisoners too. Only Teyuet has some mark of the penis that the Oracle had. She's the same person, maybe. Oddly, at this point, they speak of a prophecy with a hero called William, and William thumbs at that. He's not that William. He's just named after William Tell. I'm like, hey? What? I thought this program was about you.
Do tell, William.
A peculiar conversation about who has full sacks follows. It was awkward. There was lots of bulging and following of sacks. Is your sack bulging? My sack's really bulging. My nose is bulging. Exactly. William shares his bulging sack with Teyuet anyway. Okay, we'll leave it there.
To make hers bulge and overflow as well.
Just this, this is 3 minutes of talk about bulging sacks. I'm like, just get on with it.
It's like bulging sacks and meat in Conan.
Weird. Anyway, back at Spooky HQ, Creel and Zax use the eye again to see. And this time they see into the mine and probably, like me, wince at all the bulging sack conversations they have in. Creel says there is someone dangerous to their plan in the mines. Who might that be? Dun, 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 dun. In the mines, things go from bulging to worse as they attempt to steal the key to their shackles and get caught. We'll just kind of give up immediately, really. They hide it behind a rock and then just give it to them. Go, there, I had it. Sorry, it's me. It's really weird. It's no attempt to escape. And they end up with Teyuet getting thrown into a bottomless pit known as the Pit. Horrible. Grimstar appears to be getting messages from Creel somehow and seeks to make sure William is held captive until they arrive. William and Co decide to try and escape again and with a show of force, and indeed they do in the action sequence of the episode. William and his unlikely band of sack-bulging fellows take on the might of at least 4 people in a fight to escape, all the while with the influence of light and dark magic fighting too, as Creel and the Oracle appear in an exchange of grimaces and winces and such. Our gang triumph, of course, escaping, and handily so, past the place where all the weapons are kept, and then proceed to try and sneak out of the mines using their wits, guile, trumpet blowpipes, and lightning-powered door-opening crossbow bolts from wherever they found those.
It's like a weapon out of BioShock.
It really is. It's so stupid.
It's like, what does this crossbow do?
This is some kind of external location at this point, but I love the fact that there are wooden barrels just strewn everywhere to give it that kind of middle. Nothing says Middle Earth, does it, or Fantasy World, than strewn barrels. They're everywhere. They're even in Conan, just barrels. Well, the Coopers are literally losing business here. Go and pick them up. Anyway, they emerge from the caves with no real challenge, only to find themselves in the midst of some kind of assembly of soldiers, which did make me laugh that, with Zax clearly arriving to get William from the hands of Grimstar and Co., which sounds like an 80s dance act. Oddly, even though I have a feeling he would know, William and his band of merry people don't recognise Zax and seem confused as to who he is and his purpose, in spite of being surrounded by a platoon of soldiers on horseback, all with an eye logo on them.
Yeah.
Of course, it's too late. William has left the mines, and the 3 people remaining in there are battered and confused, confessing to Zax that William, though they don't know his name, has escaped because he joined forces with others. I love that they all know who they're talking about, in spite of no one actually stating who they are, where they are. So they just say, it must be the new guy. And he says, you mean you left him with the others? I'll wager that a complex mining operation would get a regular delivery of prisoners and workers. Specifics do matter in these kind of things. Anyway, Zax kills Grimstar with a plastic sword and then buggers off after enunciating everything over and over again. He's very enunciating. He's very, isn't he?
Zax. Oh,
yeah.
God,
Mr.
the way he
Zax.
spoke.
Anyway, after more loving shots of New Zealand and the simple removal of manacles with a light tap of an axe, why didn't they just do that anyway? Our heroes decide they should go home, which is really funny because it could have just ended right there. It would have been brilliant. Right, I think we'll just go home. All right, end credits. Anyway, as if by magic, because it's Oracle magic, Teyuet reappears. Indeed, this prompts Seth to use the phrase, by Jamanda's sacred knuckle, which made me laugh and have too many questions to dig into in this podcast. I don't want to know how we found that out. I just don't want to know.
What's the sacred knuckle?
I don't think who's Jamanda and how did you... There's too many questions. Anyway, it wasn't Teyuet. It was Caleb the Oracle dressed as Teyuet in an alarming display of callousness, I thought. Caleb politely informs William he must carry on the battle for Kayla and fulfill his destiny. And as leverage, also states that everyone he knew, including his parents, has been killed by Zax and Creel, and the land he knew is ruined. And then to soften that potentially devastating blow, brings William his dog, Alvar. Look at the dog. Look. William notices his dog is injured. And in a truly weird twist, Caleb performs some kind of human canine mind meld where we see from Alvar the dog's eye perspective that Zack burns William's parents to death and orders the soldiers to kill him. I mean, let's talk about having difficult conversations. Goodness me. It's like, what that escalated.
Yeah, kid show, isn't it?
Then comes the show setting sentence. You must rescue the princess and find the talisman of Kayla. I mean, he knew he had to do that because she told him that about 10 scenes ago when she made the bread bowl future predictions. But now everyone's dead. and they've traumatized his dog. Only the crystal arrow, the talisman of Kayla, has the power to defeat Shaitan's Eye. And as even after that, William doubts his mission. Caleb says he's not alone, and the whole gang that he'd previously said were going home join in to be heroes. Yay!
Yay!
So they return to the Citadel, now guarded by the same 8 soldiers we've seen throughout the show in their quasi-mountain bike COVID mask apparel. William and co now scale the walls and climb in, presumably to rescue the princess, whom none of them have seen or know, nor do they know where she is in the Citadel. Seth gets captured because he's a bit crap, and Creel, observing everything via the eye, starts to have weird visions of William as the source, and of having great power, something that gives him an instant ibuprofen advert-looking headache. Oddly, this is resulting in him electrocuting and vaporizing one of his own soldiers. When Seth tries to escape, just kills one of his own men. Zap! Before he then also finds himself being zapped and taken into Creel's lair, I guess. The remaining 3 sneak through more corridors, short corridors, very short, and come across Alvar the dog, who had presumably at this point scaled the walls of the Citadel. It's a clever dog. It is at this point the 3 realise that none of them really know what the princess looks like or where she might be in the Citadel, a conversation that would probably have been better before they sneaked into a guarded Citadel, I felt. And to rectify this, even though Aruna says she knows what she looks like, William performs a group mind meld with Alvar the dog and Aruna, implanting the image of the princess Inception style into the dog's brain and then asking him to find her, even though Aruna reveals at this point Arborians don't like dogs. So she's an Arborian and they don't like dogs. That's just too weird. But the dog did scale a wall single-handed at this point, as far as we know, so. I need to say, throughout this episode, it bothers me the way William carries his crossbow. I don't own one, but I would imagine the part the bolts shoot from is not the place to point towards yourself, and since he never seems to load this, it just looks dangerous. Or is the crossbow strangely built? It's hard to know. It looks back to front to me. Anyway, Creel and Zax interrogate Seth and quickly use the power of the eye to find out what he's up to and who he's with. Indeed, it takes less than 20 seconds, I counted. And although it seems odd to have Seth, and also it seems odd that they have to have Seth there to do this, why can't the eye just do that from a distance? Why do they need to have it right next to him? Is the eye short-sighted? Anyway, they set a trap. William and co find the princess in a room after punching a guard in a moment of hilarious impromptu extra violence, only to be found she doesn't want to be rescued. Indeed, she's under the spell of Creel and Zax, remember, who promptly also appear out of nowhere. William attempts to control his dog. For some reason, at that point, goes sit, which is really weird, and then tries to confront a sneering Zax after realizing it was Zax that murdered his parents, something which he had been told prior to the first dog mind meld.
Yeah, absolutely.
William is overpowered by Zax and taken to the Crystal Room, which sounds like a 90s nightclub. The rest of the team are put in a cage, so definitely a 90s nightclub.
Yeah, I think I've been there.
With William tied to a chair in the Crystal Room, Creels informs him the eye has had its eye on him for a while and identified him as the source again. No idea what that means, though. The rest of the team are stuck in a plastic cage with bendy bars, and luckily, not the most secure cage at that. So Leon bends the bars, allowing Aruna to escape, and she then tricks the guard so they can all escape, and then ask the dog to find William. I mean, they put a dog in jail. It's really weird. It's like, what? Why? In the Crystal Room, Creel informs William their fates are linked and have been all along. Then the Oracle gives Creel what looks like brain freeze using her remote powers, and also attempts to block William's mind from Creel, but Zax prepares a crossbow bolt, and the Oracle's power starts to fade as Creel starts to get the upper hand. Luckily, Alvar the dog and the rest of the gang turn up. Zax is, I want to say, threatened by Alvar the dog, but it looks more like he just wants a treat. There's a scuffle in a ridiculously tight quarters, the eye is kicked into the floor, and then, and this was really weird, placed in the mouth of a nearby crocodile statue. Creel discovers this and just takes it out of the mouth of the statue instantly, and then uses it, but because they open a door, inadvertently kills all the guards waiting outside, who, for reasons, don't think to come in and stop what's going on in the first place.
Nope. Okay.
So the heroes escape, and en route grab the princess against her will, and then try and escape again. Creel tries to stop them by taking over the mind of Seth and making him act weirdly and obviously as if he's being too helpful in a castle he knows nothing about and an escape route he has never used. It's not clear who is tricking who or betraying who at this point, but Creel vaporizes Seth for some reason.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Yeah, really brutal.
Yeah.
Made for kids.
Alvar the dog handily leads them to a secret entrance he used to get in, handy and dog-sized, and they all sneak out, thereby escaping. Creel informs Zax that they will inform the kingdom that William Tell kidnapped the princess. Technically he did, though, and murdered the king and queen, thus making him an outlaw and the enemy of the people, which is just plain mean. In the final scenes, one of which owes a lot to Lord of the Rings, we see New Zealand scenery and some discussion about who will look after the princess as they walk off into a kind of distance. The Oracle appears and tells William again to wear the arrow pendant and that he must find the crystal arrow. Finally, William begrudgingly agrees and roll end credits. Oddly, with some characters walking into the sunset that weren't even in this episode.
Yeah, we haven't met them yet.
Oh, well. So most of these actors won't be familiar to us particularly. They're all very familiar, though, to a lot of Australian TV shows and New Zealand TV shows. Kieran Hutchinson, as I said, he played in most of the people in this had been in most of the other Cloud9 shows, and particularly the Adventure Island, or whatever it's called, so the Lost Island one. And so most of these characters have been in there before. I wouldn't say that any of the characters in this were really very good. Acting is pretty crap all the way through, very hammy. There's no real camaraderie or sense of, nobody really seems to like each other that much. The characters in it aren't very likable. William Tell's a kind of a handsome guy, but all said, this is an incoherent story and literally nothing to do with the legend of William Tell. Nothing apart from the fact that at one point he shoots an apple. Yeah. That's how they've linked it. And then after that, all bets are off. It's just a guy called William Tell who in the actual episode confesses they just named me after him. I have nothing to do with him. So it's like, well, why call it the legend of William Tell? Why not just call it, Arrow or something?
Yeah.
And that's, there is another show which is actually based properly on the legend of William Tell called Crossbow, which we won't talk about here, but there is another one which we'll come to when we do a little bit more of a dive into the reception influence. But so overall, my critique of the characters and the story for this were fairly simple. The characters were really hammy. It felt like they were in a kind of, I guess, like it's almost like Neighbours with costumes, actually. It's very, very like that. It's very safe. No one's getting hurt. Even the enemies are killing people with plastic swords. There's some moments of weird brutality in it, but nothing too violent or gory. No swear words, no cussing, nothing like that. Mine are sort of, even if people are caged or imprisoned, it's not really in any meaningful way. And perhaps more importantly, the story progresses, but in the stupid ways. The minuscule scrap of story that there is, which is some kind of prophecy figure, which is similar to the Conan one, actually, is stretched over 45 minutes with meaningless rubbish and just endless getting trapped in a cave and then getting out and getting trapped in a cave and getting out. And that vampire has stupid fangs. So, really did.
He's a vampire. Why is he sharpening a sword?
And why is he chasing him in daylight? I don't know. We never you don't really find answers to these questions. But what I'll say is this. Scores-wise, I wasn't very impressed with it. Considering these are what should be reasonably well fleshed out characters, at least you could go somewhere with the idea of the crossbow thing and do all of that. To try and sort of put this into kind of a fantasy world, and a bad one at that. No matter how many barrels you strewn around or how many villages you burn, this is a 4 for me. What about you?
Yeah, I have not got much to add to that. It's another, as you've noted, another chosen one story for some strange reason. Although this one usurps the arrow-splitting guy from history and plants him in some Amdram nightmare of bad hats and terrible fantasy acting.
Terrible.
Zex, or whatever his Zax, or whatever his name is, when Zax. He first walks up to the thing is, I am Zax, and you will find. I'm like, oh God, Lord.
Pantomime, very pantomime.
Yeah,
acting,
very panto. Yeah, the only character I actually, the story's pants. The only character I had any time for was actually the legless kobold. I thought he was quite funny when he's in the thing. Why are you here? Why am I in a cage? Why is he sharpening that sword?
He's going to kill you first.
Yeah, you've got lots of meat on you. That dialogue was actually quite funny. And I was that's the only bit in it. I was like, that exchange when they're stuck in there was the only bit in it. I was like, this bit's okay because that kobold character was made it, and then he suckers him. I told you, don't trust anyone. It's like, yeah, I could get on with him. I want more of him and less of William Bohr.
Yeah, he's boring.
Beyond that, I didn't find much in the way of enthralling narrative or relatable character here. It also, there's bits in it that made me laugh. They got to go across that bridge. There's that bit they got across that bridge, and the woman is like, I thought she was like part tiger or something for a thing. I thought she was for a thing, Aruna, and she goes, you can't get across there, and she goes, yeah, watch me. And I was thinking, I thought she was going to jump over. No, she climbs across just on the rock. I'm like, oh, that's well boring. Jump.
Everything's boring.
Yeah, and also as well, I laughed loads when the sorceress proclaims him a hero. Right, you are the hero, and then he goes to see the vampire and tries to run away. He gets brained when he throws something at him, done it from behind. There's a cut to the sorcerer going, oh,
yeah, there is. Yeah, don't go in there. Don't go in there.
Just looking away. Yeah, just looking away is in disgust at his ineptitude.
So, just needed subtitles. For sake.
Yeah. And I did like reading a dog's mind. Reminded me of the flashback in Hills Have Eyes 2, where the dog has a flashback.
It's just a bit random. Why?
It is really
Twice they do that. Twice.
It's really random. It's like it's
weird
really
once.
brutal as well. And the shot. How is that? It cuts in the actual thing. It's like that dog is all over the shop. What's going on? No, this was rubbish. I gave it a 3.
Deservedly so. Okay, well, there's our initial scores for those. They're not great scores, are they? For Conan's doing quite well there, but William Tell, oh dear. So Conan's kind of ruling the roost so far. And I suppose when it comes to characters and things like that, it's going to, isn't it? So let's move on to our next exciting category. And this time, Adrian, I want you to tell us of the costumes and sets of Conan.
Okay, let's start with the costumes then. The costume designer on Conan was Michela Gizzotti, I think. I think there's a lot of Italian people worked on Conan. Or Italian or French. I think it's quite a European. It was originally released in Germany. That's why it's quite hard to come across anything about it. But it was, so she's not worked on much that I kind of recognised. Pit and the Pendulum, Phantoms, On Dangerous Ground, something. She's not really done much, but she worked in the costume department on The Barbarians.
Makes sense.
Which I think is the link here. So so we're definitely in swords and sandals territory here. I mean, that's this, Conan wears nothing but a furry loincloth, headband, and boots. I mean,
it's your favourite. You wear that for often, look.
I do. When I'm trying
That's your weekend outfit.
When I'm trying to impress my partner,
or gardening,
or going to the shop, or wherever, or doing a lecture.
Here comes Conan again.
Why would you wear that?
They're going to kill you first when you get out there. Why am I in this cage? Why have I got no legs?
Plenty of meat on you.
How did that happen?
So that's what he wears for the entirety of the proceedings. He never changes. When he sleeps, he just goes to sleep. I guess this is emblematic of the character because it's more Conan the Destroyer than Barbarian. So this is more Destroyer in tone and everything like that. It's more Destroyer, this is.
Yes.
So because in Conan the Destroyer, and he's just in a headband, loincloth and boots, isn't it? It's the same. That's what this is. And I think that's more what you kind of traditionally are used to from the Conan character when you kind of see him in paintings and stuff or images. He's usually just loincloth and that's it. So they've gone for that. And Mullo carries it well though. He's big and well grown. He certainly
is.
You can't really sort of knock him for that. And he certainly looks the part. The rest though, typical sword and sorcery stuff, fantasy stuff, tunic, cloaks, armors, helmets. It's that. It's your bog standard stuff. There's nothing particularly stood out. It's obviously not the most expensive. I didn't mind the outfits of the soldiers. They kind of had a bit of a nice cut to them.
Good.
That was all. And all in all, I mean, it fits what I'd expect from the genre. There's nothing that I thought looked out of place. But Mickey Rooney's a little bit weird. He's obviously village elder, so he's got a bit of finery. Swords, various weapons, so the costume and things like that. The sort of those kind of things. They look decent enough. They weren't flipping about, so they looked all right. And the final sword that he does get was cool. Nothing in the costumes that really made me laugh. Tamara's obvious cleavage revealing outfit was stupid, and then them two women at the beginning. So for God's sake, she's prom dress central. Okay. But yeah, the costume I had no issue with. I thought were fine. The sets, I think this benefits from being filmed in Mexico. And there's a good look to the outside scenes that are filmed there.
Yes,
I've not tended to see a lot of this. I've not tended to see a lot of things filmed in Mexico. So I've seen a lot of films. Obviously, I think Lord of the Rings, did New Zealand, and you're watching William Tell, you see New Zealand. You've seen that a lot. I've not seen a lot of Mexico in these kind of things. So it has a different feel and tone and look to where it's set. It just, the vegetation, the landscapes, they just look a bit different. And I think that kind of benefits this. It makes it look a little bit, and I'm not saying, I just don't know Mexico that well, because I've not seen it in much TV stuff. So I think it has a bit of a different look to it. And I kind of like that. Interior sets, who was the guy who did the interior sets? Giovanni Natalucci and Roger C. Ambrose were the production design and set decoration. I'm not sure they've worked on much that I was aware of, really. Roger C. Ambrose worked on quite a lot as production design and things like that, but nothing that has leaped out at me. They're going, oh, I did that. Giovanni Natalucci, sort of same thing. He worked on production design of From Beyond and Lady Hawk. So there's a bit of that in there. And on Caligula and Once Upon a Time in America. So Giovanni Natalucci has worked on quite a lot. So, so there is, like I said, some Italian sort of talent in this.
There's hints of it in there when you think about it as well.
But I thought the interior sets I didn't think they were that good. But there's only a couple, which is the wizard's lair and the cave. I think everything else is, just about filmed outside. I'm not sure about the night scene. Where Garth kills the soldiers. That might have been a set as well. I think it might have had the look of a set, but it's not too bad. But the cave at the end, that looked a bit built and a bit polystyrene-y. It didn't look particularly great. Hizazul's lair, bit stereotypical and clean, way too clean. Yeah. Like, those women are clearly cleaners. So I don't know what else they're doing there because it's very clean. But yeah, so they're not that great. So the sets, they're all right. It benefits, like I said, keeping most of the action out in the wild. I think that works.
Yes,
and it does it good. So that they managed to hide the budget, which probably wasn't a lot, but by keeping it out in the land and all the bits and bobs, the conversations happen, in forest and trees and stuff like that. I found this was all right. I actually quite like the look of this, apart from that sort of, like I said, bit of we'll come to the lighting and things like that and cinematography a bit later. But I thought this was all right. I gave it a 7 for the sets and costumes. I thought this was solid fantasy Conan fare. So, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Same agreement with you. I thought the costumes were very in keeping with this, what I would have expected for this kind of show, if not slightly better. Some of the makeup on the characters was good, especially in the gladiator scenes a bit later. Those scenes were really effective and really effectively lit, and it felt dusty and sandy and a bit brutal. And it was actually, you got a sense that it was filmed somewhere quite well, and there was someone had taken time to sort of think about how that was going to look on screen. So that actually worked really well. All the costumes costumes in this were fitted better for a Conan show than the costumes perhaps did for shows like Hercules, actually, and for Xena and things like that, which is clearly the reason there's a lot of cleavage in this is because of those shows. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have a bit of the booby percentage, as it were. But the costumes around that, not around the boobies, but around everything, where I thought were pretty good for this. And then also the sets. I thought the set for this was clearly mostly outdoors, and it really, really helped it and worked because unlike William Tell, which tried not to do that as much as possible, apart from lots of New Zealand.
Yeah, weirdly,
it doesn't. When you've done it right, if you think about it, the cliche sets, the wizard's lair as it was and such like that, they were very Conan the Destroyer actually.
Yes.
What I'd like to have seen was more Conan the Barbarian, where it's a little bit more sparse and a bit grubby around the edges and not really that well kept. But it's a TV show at the end of the day, and I was quite impressed with both the look and feel of this in terms of where they were and the locations and the space that they used in those locations. It felt like the village was quite well spaced out. There was plenty of things happening. There was just place. There was a good sense of place. And in something like this, you need that because that sets this proper scene for where Conan can do the Conan-y type things. And the costumes in that all seem pretty effective to me. I mean, Conan looked like Conan. This is the best looking Conan I've seen since Schwarzenegger's Conan, I think.
Yeah.
And the rest of the characters as well. Yeah, obviously they're kind of the villagers. They're in village wear. There must be a costumes department somewhere that just specializes in decrepit villages and mayors or something.
Yeah, probably.
But anyway, in this instance, I actually gave it a 7 as well.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
So there we are. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the costumes and sets then of The Legend of William Tell. So the costume design here is by somebody called Gavin McLean. Now, he did almost all of the other Cloud9 shows, but also that included The Adventures of the Swiss Family Robinson, which has a fairly significant sort of look and feel. They all have a kind of look, these shows. But also, get this guy was also known for doing Heavenly Creatures and Once Were Warriors. Go figure. The costumes in this show are weird.
Yeah.
But in keeping, I suppose, with fantasy, William is dressed a bit like a mix of William Wallace in Braveheart with hints of Conor McLeod from Highlander, maybe a bit of Heath Ledger in terms of some way he looks at that time, and some Home and Away vibes. And then there's bits of other pieces of Cloud9 shows in as well. But these all look a bit like extra costumes from either Hercules or Xena, that kind of thing, but perhaps not as good as that. And also pantomime-y. In fact, all the characters look like they've just stepped off a pantomime in this, which is a bit of a shame.
Yes.
Most of the important folk in this have hats or crowns. The millinery in this show is outrageous. There's just hats, spiky hats, pointy hats. There's lots of hats made of wire and crowns made of wire. And Creel has a really daft-looking hat with kind of inward-pointing horns. And so everyone's got. And then, of course, you've got Zax in his kind of really odd sort of bright white. That's an impractical suit to wear when you're riding on a horse. Is white.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got, of course, Creel has sort of dark clothes. The Oracle has kind of dressed in white, looking a bit like a sort of a nun, I suppose, really, in a sort of weird way, maybe that kind of thing. So they're polarizing costumes of the good and bad, but William Tell, who's the main character, and then his team look like they've just been abandoned from the set of The Sword and the Sorcerer at some point and just found their own adventure in somewhere. The guard costumes all look like they're wearing some kind of polo hockey mask. So they've got these kind of wide, clear visors, which look like those masks that people wore during COVID when they were in restaurants. And the rest of the costumes just look like they're from the kind of Howard's Way, if it went kind of brutally villagery and stuff. It's all very BBC drama department, Doctor Who level costuming here. Mm-hmm. Quasi medievally looking sort of costumes for kings and important folk with baggy pantaloons and things like that. But, not a lot of stuff. And you don't see a lot of footwear in this show. But almost the entirety of the show is filmed from a waist upwards. It's very strange for that. You don't see a lot of anything like that. Not that I want to, but you don't really see a lot of full people in full dress, apart from maybe some outer shots in the villages. And speaking of that, the sets in this show, few and far between. There's clearly a build of a small cave set, because that features quite a lot in this, at the start in the cave vampire section, later in the mines, and also later in the citadel for some reason. Mm-hmm. The citadel is shown from the outside. I'm not sure if that's what that is. It's probably a building of some, I think it's a corn silo or something that's been kind of dressed, or a sheep pen. I don't know what it is, but it's clearly not, the inside set.
I didn't think it was there. I thought it was like
it could be crap CG or a miniature or something like that. But even then, it's at the early days of CG. It's probably, let's say, a model. Not a very good one, though.
No.
And it's the equivalent, when the king and queen come out on the balcony, it's the equivalent of the knights of the French knights in Monty Python standing at the top of the castle going, you silly English kniggets. So there's not, and then the inside of this is claustrophobic. Everything about the sets in this is claustrophobic. They're so tiny and they cram so many people in them that you barely really see the sets. And I think that's on purpose because they look cheap. So the caves are clearly polystyrene, painted polystyrene, and there's no doubt about that. And what they do is try and intersperse that with lush shots of New Zealand scenery to kind of remember where you are, this fantasy world and everything else. And there's some occasional, there's a little bit of location work when they exit the mines, but not much. And it's so tightly closed in on those people and their dialogue that you don't really see the set around them. And that's kind of sort of typical of this entire show. You don't really see any scenery. You see is an external shot or a helicopter shot of New Zealand. Outside of that, you're on a set when it's tiny and a really tiny construction, clearly built in a little loop. So most things are decorated in a typical TV fantasy style of this particular production company. Not a very big stretch from Doctor Who, actually, but it looks almost exactly like all the other Cloud9 shows of this type. The production designer, and this is going to blow your mind, is somebody called Dan Henner. Now, he's better known for King Kong in 2005, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug.
Wow.
It shows, in some areas, it kind of shows with all them barrels, but it's cheap made-for-TV stuff. And the interior of Bilbo's home, if you think about it and the way it's done, looks a lot like William's house. And when they go into it with William's parents, it's very similar. Wooden barrels, low tables, and pots on the boil, that kind of thing. So this guy has an idea of what small villages' houses look like, and that's what he does. So it looked a bit like, I'm being very generous, a bit like Lord of the Rings. However, all that said, the costumes are not, they're bright and colourful and very safe. No, no one's grubby, no one's dirty, no one's getting mucky, nothing's happening. There's no blood or anything like that. Nothing's going to happen like that. No. So really, they're just kind of wearing pantomime costumes, and it feels like a pantomime. As far as the sets go, they may as well have been on a pantomime stage because they're tiny, tiny, tiny sets, and you don't see a lot of them because pretty much everything is focused on the actors that are crammed into the frame. So I gave this a 4, but what about you?
Yeah. Again, like I mentioned for Conan, it does make some use of the natural beauty of the location. There are some nice landscape shots from time to time when they do feel to it, but they don't use it very well, and they don't use it as often as they could have done. But the interiors of this, and which there are a lot, and I've written like you, would look pretty cheap and rubbish. I just thought this did not look good. Same goes for the costumes. Some of the main characters are okay, I guess, but the secondary characters, not so much. And the headwear is just off the charts bonkers. I mean, it's just anyone of any note has just got crazy headgear on. When they first turn up in that cave at the beginning with the dreadful backlighting, and I was like, what is going on here? What are they wearing? I don't know. There's a lot more that could have been done here. But I don't know. There's the locations and the sets, it really betrays a lack of budget. And like you said, it's all very tight. There's very little space to move. There's not much space in the way of camera shots or anything like that. But I'm giving this a 4 as well. I didn't think much to it from a production set.
Okay, well, again, William Tell getting a kick in the apples there. Whereas Conan obviously coming out on top. Again, Conan's likely to do that, though. He's a big fella.
Yeah, absolutely.
So far, it's not a great picture, is it, for William Tell? He's being a bit beaten down, and Zax is getting the better of him. Maybe he shouldn't communicate with his dog quite so much. Yeah. Anyway, let's now take a look into the music and sound effects. So music and sound effects. Well, over to you again, Adrian, for the wondrous sounds of Conan.
Wondrous? Okay. I mean, let's put this into context, because, this is up, and I know this may be a unfair comparison, but this is up against the Basil Polidori's score for the first film. You think Conan, you think dun 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 dun.
Yeah, you do.
You think of the great score. And it has. So this has got some big trombones to fill, and it kind of falls short, I think, in that area. I think this is the music. It's okay. It's TV okay. This was composed by Charles Fox. He had worked on over 100 shows and films by this point.
Wow!
So he worked on loads. But I looked through them. The only ones that stood out to me were European Vacation. He did that, and 9 to 5.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Can you remember the music for European Vacation or 9 to 5? Apart from the song?
No, I only really remember the song. So.
Yeah, everyone remembers down, 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 down. Everyone remembers that. I don't know if he had anything to do with that. It was Dolly Parton. So I don't know. I don't remember anything. And then I looked at the other titles he'd worked on. I was like, none of this rings a bell. It's just TV stuff. I mean, he's obviously a stalwart veteran of TV scores. There's nothing that's going to stick in the mind. And that is the case here, I found. After finishing 2 episodes of this, I couldn't remember one or hum you one piece of music from either of them. Going back to listen, they're very typical for the genre. They use the sounds and the instruments that you'd expect to hear in this kind of thing. But nothing just stands out. And there's a lot of music. A lot of scenes have a lot of music. Like the bit where she's trying to steal his meat. It's all that kind of creepy, playful. It's all that sort of thing. And at the beginning, it's all, and the music, the main theme, it's just not particularly memorable in any way, shape, or form. Various moods are captured, but it just blends together for me into, fantasy score number 13 or something. It's it's a bit bland. There was nothing really sort of that stood out. And I don't, when I was watching it, even the big battle action scenes occur, there's nothing really memorable. The music doesn't pick up in any notable way to get the adrenaline pumping when you're watching a battle scene. It's just a bit, it's a battle scene going on. It picks up a little bit, but it's nothing to get you going. So I thought the music was a bit bland, a bit boring. Sound effects are okay. Usual Foley to be expected, clangs of swords, grunts, lots of grunts from Ralph Muller, lots of grunts.
Very grunty.
And
get the grunts in.
Yeah, the swings of swords, sword-hitting flesh, and thuds and falls, everything you expect. They're all fine. Nothing sounds out of place. There's nothing really of note, though. I just thought the sound, I found that the sound mix is fine. It's all there. You can hear everything. It's all good, but it's just TV. It's very TV of its time, and it lacks. It really needed a theme, a proper theme.
Yes,
a Conan theme.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have it. So boring music. I gave this an average 5. It's perfectly serviceable, and nothing stood out, and nothing like made me go So it's a 5. What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, actually. I thought the music was okay, but very in keeping with the kind of tone of this kind of TV show.
Yeah.
But it was not memorable. And these shows kind of live and die by their memorability. And also that voiceover at the beginning was really annoying and went on for ages. And that's a perfect opportunity to have a good Conan music.
Well, it even goes on during the dream.
It does, yeah.
That's the weird bit.
Stopped. I mean, it fits well into the myth and magic music, but nowadays, this would be something that you'd probably download from some free, copyright-free website. It's kind of, fantasy background music. You hear a lot of it in games, video games sometimes, and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the games, of course, its purpose is not to be noticed because you're obviously looking for other things. Here, it kind of needs to drive the action a bit. And where there are action scenes, you do need kind of... Conan is principally an entire film based around its music. There's not a lot of dialogue in there. And so the music expresses certain moods and themes of the characters and the sadness and the things about Conan. And that's kind of... that standard was set. And it sort of tries... It never really gets as good as that again, but it tries with Conan the Destroyer as well. And so this probably should have gone down that road. Instead, they opt for the kind of Xena. But I mean, Xena and Hercules had quite memorable themes. So I think they've just kind of got a bit lost in the mix. Sound effects wise, it had all the sound effects I expected, but none of them really made me go, wow, that was amazing, or that was a crazy good sound, or anything like that. But nothing sounded out of place. So, and with you, I gave it a 5. I thought it was just very average, which is a bit of a misstep, really. It could have been something great.
Yeah. Conan, when I think of Conan on the big screen or on the screen, it's like I think of memorable fantasy music and tunes and...
Yeah. Big kettle drums and bum, 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 bum and big pomp.
Yeah.
Lots of pomp and, and big choruses and things like that. This, he's a big guy. You need a big sound for that.
Yeah. And so that's not here.
No, it's not.
No.
So then with the music and sound effects of The Legend of William Tell, God, the music was by Simon May. Now, he composed the EastEnders theme, apparently.
Weird.
Or at least still something to do with it. And The Jewel of the Nile. And something called Killer Fish. He also did Howard's Way and El Dorado.
Wow, he's been around.
Yeah, he was known to Raymond Thompson from Cloud9 from back in the BBC days. The music isn't too bad on the whole. It's a mixture of Irish Celtic traditional with hints of Scotland and some clonad with Mike Oldfield thrown in. The textures are kind of folksy and some wider drama, but with kind of an electronic sort of heart in there, which I think makes it feel out of place. This isn't what this needed. It has a very much a BBC radiophonic style sound to it, though. Very BBC Doctor Who circa 1970, 1980. Not maybe as synthy as that, but that kind of tonality. And the music's okay, but like I said, hints of Braveheart and Highlander pretty much all the way through, certainly in the action sequences. There's a lot of playful sounding stuff that sort of bubbles along with the action, such as there is. Very like Xena and Hercules. They kind of did that and set this kind of standard for it, I think. The main theme isn't very catchy, though. I couldn't hum it to you right now if you tried. Which is odd considering the roots of Simon May. If you think about it, the guy made EastEnders, so could have just had a do in there, couldn't there, for some reason? But it's sort of half decent, half whimsical. There's a bit of Lord of the Rings styling in there, dare I say it. It predates Lord of the Rings, but not by that many years.
3.
It's not offensive, and there is kind of some nice electric guitar work in the Mike Oldfield tradition, so slightly distorted guitar. And it's okay, but it just doesn't work coherently with what you're seeing on the screen. Now, the opening sequence features William Tell just running out of his house and looking kind of stressed. It's just, there's nothing, because there's no action in it to speak of, really, and there's no real scenes of anything in it, apart from people climbing in and out of cave entrances. It doesn't make for a great opening sequence. I imagine maybe it gets better as the TV series progresses. I don't know. But I find it very underwhelming. And it's okay in terms of the musicality of it, but it didn't shout, this is a great show. It didn't have the hook. And these shows need that, and it didn't have that. Sound effects, this is again, it blew my mind, this. Sound effects, a guy called Don Powlin is the editor of the sound effects. Now, he did Once Warriors, but it's also, and the sound mixer for the sound effects was a guy called Michael Hedges. Now, he did District 9, King Kong, and Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Now, what this is telling me is that you've got a mix with these shows of old sort of production teams from back in the BBC days and really up-and-coming young talent who are just cutting their teeth. So I imagine some of the skills and things they're learning on this show were all carried into the Lord of the Rings movies and things like that later down the line. And it kind of shows when you think about it. So the music, not that bad, but not very memorable. The sound effects, again, all Foley sounds with this, and not actually very good Foley sounds. There's no clinking of swords because they're all plastic. So you just get kind of crappy zap sounds with crackling, and there's no real sword fights. And there's maybe horse hooves and stuff like that. And the crossbow that he barely uses, but you don't get that kind of zip, kind of sound. I was expecting a lot more of that, and you don't really bother with it. He carries it around a lot. So there's not a lot of sound effects in it. There's mostly people talking, which is kind of boring. So I didn't rate the William Tell. I gave it a 4, and that's all music, really. And I didn't think the music was that good or memorable, but that's what I gave it. What about you?
Yeah. I maybe a little bit more. I thought it was an interesting attempt at some guitar-based Celtic tune for the main theme, which is not terrible, but not particularly memorable. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, that was my problem with it.
Yeah, same goes for the rest. Lots of Celtic-sounding instruments, but nothing really of note to sort of stick in the mind. None of the sound effects were particularly outstanding. However, I did like the use of the drummer on the horse.
Yeah. Actually,
pounding the approach of the army to the present king and queen. Yes. I thought that was a really nice touch. It reminded me, and it's not in the same league, but it reminded me of the flame-spewing guitar guy in Fury Road. You bring your own soundtrack with you You bring your soundtrack of Doom with you. And I quite liked him just going, because the king's like, would you stop that? And he's like, boom, boom, boom. And I thought, actually, that's one of my, there's a couple, like the kobold guy and that bit. That's a couple of nice little ideas. I like that kind of like, we're going to bring the boom of Doom to you. And so that was all right. So that's why I lifted it a little bit. Nothing much to catch the ear, though. Some terrible BBC style sound effects, as you've rightly noted. I give it a 5 because of that boom boom guy.
Thinking about it, I thought the boom boom guy is good. And also, actually, it marks the arrival of an army, which is quite nice. Because Conan does that. Conan the Barbarian, the film, does that because there's them scouts. And then you see that, all the horses dive over the hill, don't you? But you see that scout guy sort of breathing heavily because he's run up,
Yeah.
So, it's quite nice to foreshadow the event of something happening by doing something like that.
They hear it coming, don't they, around the corner?
So, but it's not changing my mind about that. That's the only Foley sound in it that I would give any credit to. The rest of it was rubbish. And the Celtic music for me, it was okay, but I just needed something that... But then again, this show is about nothing, actually. So maybe that's reflective of what it's about. So,
are you still sticking with a 4?
Yeah, I'm sticking to the 4.
Yeah, I'll stick with a 5. Just to sort of add to note, by the way, the guy who did the sound on Conan was a guy called Anthony Jackson, known as Tony Jackson. Now, he worked on loads and loads of stuff, but he was the sound recordist on the comic strip Presents.
Crazy.
Things like Fungus the Bogeyman Power, he did loads of stuff.
Wow.
I'm just trying to look through some of his other stuff here. It did like TV miniseries Ivanhoe, but there's some other bits, Alien Species. He's worked on loads like through the years. So that Nuns on the Run, weird stuff.
Crazy.
But,
there's a lot of credits, isn't there?
Yeah, so there's some interesting stuff here, but these people just work on these things out, wherever. But I found it quite interesting that he worked on comic strip.
Yeah, no,
so guy on that. There you go.
Well, now let's move on then, because we've got some more to look through. So let's take a look now at the cinematography and special effects, should there be any, for Conan. Over to you, Adrian.
All right. Okay. So the cinematographer for Conan the Adventurer was Adolfo Bartoli.
Ooh.
He was that. I'm just trying to... He worked on a lot of Italian stuff, but... he's worked on loads of stuff. He's still working. I think he's recently passed away. I'm not sure. But yeah, he worked on tons of stuff alongside Conan, but nothing I've really ever heard of. I mean, I looked through it and I'm looking through it again, and it's like Puppet Master 5, Trancers 5, Sudden Death, Trancers 4, Jack of Swords, Puppet Master
straight
4.
To video stuff there.
Yeah, exactly. So
straight to DVD.
Puppet. He was heavily involved in the Puppet Master and Trancers.
Yeah, I remember the Trancers and Puppet Master. It was cheap, straight to DVD stuff.
Yeah, it started Dimensione Violenza in 1983 was his first work as cinematographer. Delta Force Commando, things like that. So this is where we're coming from with this guy, Leaping Leprechauns. Nothing particularly, that would make you go, oh, he was cinematographer on that. Wow, that was really good, really good. But no, nothing particularly great. And the one thing I noticed about the cinematography in this show, there's loads of close-ups.
Yes.
There is an overwhelming amount of close-ups in this, facial close-ups, like extra close-ups. Like when anyone's ever talking, it's like, I don't know. I did wonder, this was Jeremy Kemp's last performance. I didn't know, was he unwell? Because he's a bit shaky in scenes as well.
Yeah, I thought that.
And I didn't, I'm not trying to assume he was sort of thing, but he retired from acting after this. Maybe he was unwell.
Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't look into it because it is what it is. So maybe that was it. Because Baron, a couple of scenes at the beginning, he's, where we see his glorious wizard outfit, he's filmed in massive close up.
He really is.
It's incredible. It feels a little overwhelming, and that goes for a lot of the conversation shots in this. Which are a main overriding memory of the filming of this. It's just massive close-ups. When anyone ever talking, it's like when we get the Richard Burton visage at the end sort of thing. It just fills the screen. I mean, they're proud of that CG Burton because they don't hide it. It's like
it shouldn't be,
bang.
but they are.
Yeah, so it's like, wow, okay, very close to the face, fill in the frame. There's a lot of that. There's obviously, because a lot of this is filmed outside, there's a lot of natural lighting, because a lot of it's filmed outside. So they just make use of that. When they do head inside, though, there are some attempts at atmosphere, which I thought were okay.
They were.
The scene where he gets the sword, when they're walking into the cave, some really nice backlighting, sort of silhouetting them in the backline, the sort of darkness towards the screen as they're walking towards it. This is, the use of shadows there. It creates a really ominous atmosphere as they enter.
Yes.
I thought that was really good. Inside, you've got these shafts of light that pierce the cave from above, working well in conveying like a sense of mystery and this kind of long thing. And it's like, it's not all lit. So you've got pools of light and pools of darkness. You can't really see a lot. And I think, that helps. It keeps the creature from looking just like a guy in a suit. But they utilize that well. And I thought there's some good sense of like, when they do light those sets well, they're actually, it doesn't seem flat. It seems actually quite well done. So I did like that. The battle scenes, not particularly well shot. There's little in the way of movement or sense of action, though, in the way they were shot. I thought they just felt a little bit boring. A bit weirdly. They're going a bit long and they're just a bit flat. So there's no blood to speak of. So there's nothing that I would say there's any incredible camera shots in this. There's some more, I think. There's some better ones, I think, in the second part. But it's very much lots of close-ups on the face, people talking, shot, reverse shot a lot of the time when they're just having conversations, natural lighting. There's some attempts when they're inside. The Wizard's Lair is very flat. It's very flatly lit. I mean, it's overlit. That's one of the problems with it. And like you said, it's more Destroyer than Barbarian. I would have liked to have seen that be really a bit grubby and grimy and some darkness and just put some torches on the wall and let them do the lighting.
Yeah.
That would have given it more atmosphere and made it feel a bit better. But there's none of that. It's like it's got a 100-watt bulb hanging from the ceiling. So which is a bit weird. Special effects, they're kind of what you'd expect from this time. There's not a lot. There's some visual effects for Yara's magic stone where he befuddles and uses it to sort of thingy. But there's not much else. There's just some glowing lights. The practical effects, I don't know if I'm missing any more special effects. There's nothing really else stuck out to me.
No, I don't remember any others.
The skull, that's amusing that Hisser speaks to. I think it's a practical effect, that isn't it? I think it comes back.
That is practical, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was all actually works okay.
Quite nicely articulated jaw on that.
Yeah, exactly. It works in the context of the show. The creature at the end is a bit rubbery. It's clearly just a guy in a suit, but like I said, the way that it is shot, and that actual scene is shot in a much more interesting way than the fight scenes because they keep it fast and tight so that you don't get like there's the hand as well, isn't there, that's crawling back, which reminded me of Evil Dead. Evil Dead 2. So there's that as well. So there's the hand on the floor. That's quite nice. They make it passable. They make that creature not terrible. It's okay. But for me though, too many close-ups for me to really rate this. I gave it a 6. I was bordering on a 7 for the lighting in the cave scene, but I think I'm going to err on a 6. It's all right. It does its job, but it's those that I'd like to have seen a bit more of those interior lighting setups to really sort of lift this up. And I think, a bit more atmosphere, but obviously the story, they could have set some of these scenes in better things. Like I said, the Wizard's Lair could have been better lit and things like that. So for me, it's okay. It's perfectly decent in the way that it's shot. There's nothing out of the ordinary. And I found it fine, but I did like some of those atmosphere areas, so I gave it a 6. What about you?
Yeah, actually, I felt pretty much the same. I've got a slight increase on a couple of things. I thought the show overall looked actually pretty good. I thought there's some really nice setups for camera and lighting. They were just inconsistent. External cameras, quite nice. Quite a nice cinematic feel to those external shots, helped greatly by the location and by the kind of use of the natural lighting, such as it is. So it feels quite natural outside. And when things are on fire outside, they've obviously haven't lit anything other than probably just maybe a few giant lights just to sort of illuminate a little bit. And it actually kind of works. So it doesn't have the dark and grubby feel that would have really helped it, but you're not going to endear yourself to kind of the audience that they're aiming at for this if you're going to do that. So it needs to be a bit lighter, and it does that. There's some adventures with cameras as well. There's some weird swooping Sedcam type shots of when he's having a conversation with Tamara at one point, the camera just swoops round to the right and goes behind her shoulder. And so there's obviously someone that's really wants to just, every now and again, he's sort of like, let me do it.
Right. Yeah.
And so it is, but in most of the shooting in it, it's very Hercules and Xena in that respect. Perhaps actually not quite as good as that got.
No.
But a bit more dusty, maybe. There's still a lot of strewn barrels, I suppose. Always a good sign. And I thought the camera work here on where it was adventurous and where it was perhaps in the hands of the editor and someone there had a bit of a knack for doing the right lighting for the sort of effects environments where they were doing practical effects. The set of the Wizard's Lair at the start was kind of done a bit like Willy Wonka type style. It was not as bright as that, but a bit obvious.
Yeah.
But later, when he's in the cave fighting the creature, it was quite dark and dank, and Conan's quite the lighting of Conan at that point is actually quite good because it's showing off Conan's physique, obviously, which is kind of important. And he has kind of Conan-y moments in that light, in that sort of lightness of him. And there are still quite nice long shadows. And of course, there's that really great fight in the battle arena where the lighting, it all looks very gladiator, but it actually really works that. There's a really nice vibe to that. So I was quite impressed with the cinematography of it. For a TV show of this type, I think clearly they wanted to do more, make it more cinematic. But I think one of the producers was going, waving kind of a sign that said budget on it. And they were like, okay. So they were kept having, it felt like they kept having to do something and then draw it back in. Experiment, but draw it back in. So every now and again, there's a little hint. So I gave it a 7 because I thought it was, they were trying. They were trying. Mm. With The Legend of William Tell, then, the cinematography here is from a lady called Renaud, how do you spell that? It's Renaud, so it's Renaud Marie. Anyway, she worked on a few of the Cloud9 shows, including The Tribe, which was their big hit, The Tribe. The mainstay of the look of the show is the shooting of New Zealand's photogenic South Island, isn't it? So it's, that's the kind of that's the externality of it, and that's where they've really tried to make sure it lands. It gives the kind of grass and sky quality of a TV version of Lord of the Rings in places. Predates it, but it has that. So New Zealand's a beautiful place, and it's always going to look impressive if you throw it into the mix. But the rest of the thing isn't lit for complexity at all. In fact, most situations are very, very, very boring light rigs, very flat, not very adventurous. The cameras are far too zoomed into the dialogue of people, very close up, like you said. It's always mid and close up. There's no real establishing of anything. So the establishment is them probably in a wide shot of a helicopter of them on a cliff edge. Then the next thing you'll see, they're in a case, they're at a cave entrance and it's all kind of boxed in. There's no real lighting for that, though. The lighting is not adventurous here, and it simply flattens the entire show to make it all kind of all bright and colourful, but all the same bright and colourful. There's no light or dark or tones. Yes, you've got characters that are dressed in dark outfits, but even then, aside from the few sparkly, crackly visual effects, of which there are very few, that doesn't really illuminate them into some kind of darkness. It just makes them appear with sparkly, crackly bits in front of them. There's some nice handheld camera in this, but that's kind of a sign of the budget nature of the show. So someone had a Steadicam and they were going to use it. So there's lots of kind of sort of running zooms. You can tell the camera was doing a lot of running backwards and forwards from sort of mid to close up. Mm. And of course, there's them big old helicopter shots. No, that's the money. That's the trailers, isn't it? It predates drones. So those kind of shots were really expensive. So I think that's where most of the camera budget went on those.
Probably.
Which they probably reused loads of them for other shows as well anyway. As with most of these shows at the time, like I said, shot on budget recording equipment to an extent. There's probably maybe a Steadicam in there, but I have a feeling this was either early digital or very late video. Either way, the colorization is completely flat. And I don't know if actually YouTube might have not helped with that, because YouTube can give a flattening quality to everything that's on it because of the way it compresses. But even without that, it just didn't look have the light and dark and the tones and the shade. Everything is flat lit and very boring colors. They're all colorful, but it's not a colorful show because it's just not lit that way. What special effects there are in it? Okay, there's some crackly light effects when the plastic swords, but they're clearly just swords that have got lights in them. Yeah. And then they've added some kind of crackly effect, with some kind of paint box tool or whatever. It's not very nice. It's not very effective, and it's pretty Doctor Who cheap. Yeah, actually, even some of the effects in Doctor Who are better than that. So it all feels cheap and close up, and everything occurs in really tight quarters. There's no wide shots. Everything's claustrophobic and zoomed in. It's all crammed into the frame. When they have conversations, there's at least 4 people in one frame talking over each other's shoulders because they're all like, "What are you doing? I don't know what you're doing. I don't know. Where should we go?" And it's all tightly closed in. And even when they're sort of communicating with the dog and they're putting their hands on its head, there's a giant close-up of the dog's face with hands over it. Yeah. It's just everything's like, it's all shot that way because it's the easiest way to edit a show like that without having any kind of mistakes. So you can edit out a lot of error in a show by having everybody just in close-up. And so that's what it feels like. And because of that, you're relying on the actors then if you're going to do that, then you're relying on facial drama. You're relying on the acting skills of people, none of which are present in this show. So none of the characters have the gravitas to be able to pull off anything meaningful. Even Creel as a character, he's the most expressive in it, and he doesn't really, other than having a headache now and again, doesn't really come across as anything, and nor is he lit that way. So it's flat, it's a bit dull, it's a bit lifeless, a bit like the show. It really does impact, and it's also shot in really weird aspect ratios. 1:7:8 to 11:33:1. I can't make sense of what that means, but okay. Anyway, overall, I gave William Tell a 5. So
yeah.
Did I expect anything better for this show? No, as soon as I saw the opening of it, and when I checked out what the other shows that Cloud9 produced, they all look like it. In fact, they even on their website, which still exists, they refer to it as The Look, and they do have that. I wouldn't say it was a good one. Anyway, what about you?
Flat and dull.
Yeah, it is.
Flat and dull. I didn't really like the way this was shot at all. I've not got much to say here. And even those parts that could have worked, and I think, and I would compare and contrast this, they were badly implemented and lit. If you think about the part where Conan and Otley walk into the cave with that good backlighting and the shadows and that, the way that that's shot and lit and looks natural, the way that, but it's well styled, to the cave opening at the beginning of this, where it's that crappy dry ice in the background. Everything's lit really flat in the front. Everything's lit from the front. Like the bit in Conan, then they're lit from the back, and so you have these great silhouettes.
Yeah.
This is just like lit from the front, and there's those Jawa type people running around and falling over and stuff. It's just ridiculous. And that could have been you think about how you could do that, the stealing of, what is it, the Eye of Shatner or something?
Yeah.
The Eye of William Shatner. So whatever it is. So you could film that in a much more interesting way by lowering that backlight, lowering the front light to cast some shadows and cast, it's not hard to do this.
No.
But everything's flat. So and it's just a fear of like, well, we might not see them. It's like, well, you don't need to at this point. They're stealing something. We'll recognize them from their voices and their silhouettes and things like that. And you could do something interesting there, but they don't. And I think that runs through all this film. Sorry, all this TV show. As for the special effects, they're not. I mean, using the word special, I think is being kind.
Yeah, they're not really.
And the swords, as you've really noted, are rubbish. The toy swords you get from the seaside
Pound shop. From Poundland,
we've got loads of them around the corner here.
Yeah.
What did you give this? I give this a 3.
I gave it a 5, but I'd actually, thinking about it, I'd probably drop that down to something lower. So I'd give it a bit lower than that. So I'd maybe go for maybe a 3, actually. Yeah.
I just thought it was really badly shot. I mean, they completely bungled the sort of use the fact they're in New Zealand and stuff. And it's like, you could have had all that stuff that they could have. And it wouldn't have been too hard just to place William on the side of a hill at some point and have some great backdrop, where he's walking.
Exactly that.
They don't really do much of that.
And it's all, they're just playing it so safe. It's all asinine and safe because it's kind of aimed at the Disney audience. And Disney, if you think Disney shows of their time at this point, all look like this as well. They all have this kind of flat, safe, no one's lurking in the shadows because it's a nice show. No one's going to be doing anything too evil, even though someone does get incinerated and they do mind meld with a dog.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And you watch someone burn to death. But apart from the traumatizing of a dog, most things in this are just kind of flat, uninteresting. The lighting kind of does really make it do that, doesn't it?
And a couple in the years before this, we'd had Xena and Hercules, which came from, they were Raimi, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
they were Raimi. So I remember those shows having some interesting camera work and special effects and stuff. Lots of whizzing cameras and Xena. What does she throws that? Is it the glaive?
Basically.
It's like a
spinning disc
boomerang. And there's cameras following that around and smacking people and twisting cameras. And because that's what Raimi would insist on, wouldn't he? Like, your camera needs to be kinetic. Yeah. And it's not.
Not. No. Okay. 3. I go to a 3 with that. I agree.
There you go.
Goodness me, William Tell. You're not doing so well here, are you? Bloody hell. Goodness me. All right, well, William Tell's taking yet more kick in here. It's starting to William Tell, I think. The signs are all there.
Yeah.
And so we're going to move now into our final category. Which is, of course, the reception and influence. So, Adrian, tell us indeed about the reception and influence of Conan.
It was hard to find anything of like reviews or comments from around the time this came out. I couldn't find anything. This was originally released in Germany, according to what I found. So its original release was Germany, and maybe that's why it's not American. So all the American sites weren't reviewing it or something. It just didn't pick up there. It was re-released on DVD, the full box set in 2004. But I have to say, I think this has mostly been forgotten. I mean, I'd never heard of it since its release. I don't think it got wide. I don't know if it got wide syndication. I mean, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I couldn't find much information on its syndication. I don't think it was particularly well received at the time. I don't know. Like I said, found it impossible. It premiered in Germany, like I said. Maybe it premiered in Germany because of Ralph Muller. Weirdly, I did find a note that he didn't do his own German dub.
How random is that?
It was some other one. Someone else dubbed him. It's weird. Maybe they could get him back in or something after the.
Yeah, maybe he just didn't do ADR very well. It's not easy.
And most reviews I could find are from much later. And there's lots of YouTube sort of looks at this and some reviews on various websites, sort of fan reviews and fanfics and Conan sites. And it went about as expected. Some people called it harmless trash and a bit of fun. Some called it the worst show ever and an affront to the Conan lineage and things like that because of the changing it to the Chosen One trope and things like that. So I don't know. The program, I don't really think it's had much of an influence. I mean, what influence? It's on the greater fantasy or even swords and sandals subgenre. It's because it's just disappeared. What I would say, though, the one thing I would know of this around at this time, the director for this was a guy called Gerard Hamelin. He did the first episode, right? Now, he'd worked on things like Tarzan, The New Adventures of Robin Hood, Highlander the Raven, Lager Winch. These were all around the sort of 1990s into 2000, okay? And this was a part of a sort of series of shows that kind of came out that were like this, that were trying to do something different. I think what happened was especially in the UK, maybe elsewhere around the world, there was this burgeoning cable scene. So you had channels like Sci-Fi and things like that at the time. So things like, if you can remember around that time, you had shows like Relic Hunter. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Highlander, Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World.
Yeah.
So I think that this basically fits into that part of a movement of shows that brought back some kind of fantasy themes to TV. Been a bit lost, I think, before this. There were some elements of it, and a bit of Tarzans and things like that. But these kind of shows, Hercules and Xena were at the forefront, but I think it was on the back of those. This was part of that.
Yeah.
And it was in there that maybe this is, not an influence, but kind of that wave of stuff. And William Tell is probably in the same. So I think that's kind of the only thing of note around this. It was part of a sort of slew of programs. I mean, it only lasted a season, so it obviously didn't do particularly well. But yeah, there's not really much to say about the reception of influence. So I have to give this a 2 because it seems to have been forgotten. There's nothing. What can you say about something that didn't have much in the way that I can find influence or reception? It's not like it led to the resurgence of Conan.
No, it didn't.
There was that Conan the Barbarian remake with what's his face, Aquaman.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, Momoa. Yeah, Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa. That wasn't. I didn't think was particularly good.
No, it was rubbish.
We've not had any real. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe some comics and stuff like that. But in the big screen or TV, Conan's been lost, and so this.
Yes.
So this did not bring it back. It didn't. So yeah, I've got to give it a 2. I'm afraid.
No, and I mean, my score isn't as low as that, and I totally get why you would say that. In actuality, I think it's a different kind of legacy because it's the legacy in reverse. The legacy here is what started with Conan in 1982 and the Milius film. And then it's kind of it's gone the opposite way. So this should be something that people go back to with great, it could be a piece that people go back to with great reverie, but it's gone in reverse. The shows have got worse. The films have got more awful. So it's kind of the legacy isn't what it should be.
Yeah.
This should be celebrating what are amazing characters and comics from, all the various different, I mean, I'm not a big reader of the Conan comics or anything else, but all of that happened back when before predates Conan the Barbarian, obviously the film. But all of that stuff exists, and then it's kind of just never really been fully grabbed by the TV, which is something that's a bit of a mystery to me. I don't quite know if it's something that they can't quite get their head round, or I don't know if it's I don't understand how they are unable, if they've remade Spider-Man 50 times and all these superhero movies so many times, and the tropes of those movies, they remake each other all the time. How nobody's taken up the mantle to make a Conan TV series by Netflix or by Amazon or something like that. How that hasn't happened remains a mystery to me because it's got such a legacy, and you would have expected something of that magnitude to have the influence. So I think the score of 2, I gave it a 3, but I agree with you, and I gave it for the slightly different reason. And my reasoning was because this should have legacy, this should have influence, and it's missing. And so you end up with these kind of weird TV shows, but this one just came and disappeared. Like the movies have come and it's like that Call the Conqueror movie that was kind of half Conan-y and This kind of there's the Conan Barbarian, the new Conan Barbarian, like you say, they came and just vanished. And it's like, what is it about them? There's clearly space for fighting. Lord of the Rings was a massive franchise, so that proved that there's still life in that. And now you've got the Amazon show, which is proof that still can coexist. So
I'd throw those Clash and Wrath of the Titans films in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got Game of Thrones, for goodness sake. I mean, it's but it's still fighting fantasy type stuff. So there's legs in it. What there isn't, and that's a mystery to me, is why Conan is not one of the legs. But maybe someone stole his meat and he didn't want to give it back. I don't know. But either way, no, I gave it a 3, and I felt a bit tragic giving it that, because it doesn't. It should have reception influence, but where is it?
Yeah, it should. That's what I mean by it.
It's missing.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
And it's a similar story, really, for William Tell, because the William Tell as a legendary figure, there's loads of stuff. There's paintings, films, operas, books, tales, stories. There's a figure of legend. It's the King Arthur of Switzerland. It's up there with King Arthur, Robin Hood. It's a legendary Swiss figure that's an enduring symbol of rebellion. The first movie that was made about William Tell was made by the French director Charles Pathé in 1900.
Wow.
So, and I imagine it's, a short film about a guy that shoots an apple off someone's head, because that's kind of all there is. I get that's this big act of rebellion, and I get it. Charlie Chaplin parodied William Tell in his 1928 movie The Circus. Salvador Dali painted a picture called The Old Age of William Tell, and the William Tell and the Gradiva in 1931, and the Enigma of William Tell in 1933. He's been the subject of all sorts of cultural curios for a long time. And then the films, The Adventures of William Tell in 1898, William Tell 1903, 1923, 1934, 1949, 1956, 1960, and then now there's even one for 2024. Crazy. Wow. For television series, The Adventures of William Tell was a long-running black and white show in 1958 to 59. There's The Adventures of William Tell, a short, weird-run series that was stuck to the historical record in 1987, 1989 to 1989. That's actually also known as Crossbow.
Crossbow, yeah.
Then there's The New Adventures of William Tell in 92, which is a very short-lived show. And then there's The Legend of William Tell, which is the one that we discussed for this podcast. And then there's even an unfinished film, which was the one that starred Errol Flynn famously, The Story of William Tell. Errol Flynn's one big Errol Flynn version, never actually got made. So there's loads. It's a mythic figure. It's a King Arthur. So there should be loads of legacy. And there is lots of legacy of William Tell, but not of this TV show.
No.
This TV show ran for 16 episodes. It was part of Cloud9's great syndicated experiences. They were on a mission to make safe Disney-esque type shows for kids, really. I suppose it's a kids show, nothing else. We're all self-contained, that didn't have any violence, that were very safe. And in that they succeeded. Now, the interesting notes here really are a little bit around Cloud9 Productions themselves. Like I said, Raymond Thompson, who set that up, he was basically ex-British sort of York University graduate. And interesting fact about him is he was a musician and a songwriter by trade. He set up worked in a Canadian duo, had a band with a Canadian, and had a duo called Stillwater, and he had a band when he was at school called the Avengers. Now get this, the band that he was in, the Avengers, evolved into a band called Edison Lighthouse, who had a #1 record with Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes. How mad is that? So the guy that set up the production company, his hit record was Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes. That was him. Mad. And then, like I said, he worked on Howard's Way, and all of that sort of shows. Now, he got some venture capital into this company, this Cloud9, and then they set about working with people that they kind of previously worked with, and the Sanctuary Group PLC, which is what kind of funded it. They pretty much had the remit of make us some safe, syndicatable shows. They need to be really simple hits. They don't need to be too difficult, but we need to syndicate these because these can be dubbed into any language and shipped around the globe. And so they were. You can get this show on DVD. You can, if you want to get them all in collection, it's still all on YouTube. The Cloud9 Productions have got a website. You can go to that and you can read all about these shows as well as a little bit. Not much technically about them, but there's a little bit. But all of that doesn't mean this show has any reception and influence. The reception at the time was, this is another one of those shows that looks a lot like Robin Hood, looks like all the shows you mentioned, plus all the others that are probably we're not even thinking about. There's dozens of them. Mm-hmm. There was a real step into this kind of TV version of fantasy stuff. And there's different versions of it. There's the more brutal end, and then there's the really nice end, and there's lots of in between. And that's where this falls into that safe zone. It's neighbors with swords, plastic swords. It's not, it's what it is. So reception wise, it isn't going to harm anybody because Cloud9 Productions didn't. Is it going to be memorable? No, because it's not about anything. It's not even about the actual William Tell as a legendary figure. So they've managed to avoid that, which is the one thing that they had. So to take that away, it's just a guy who happens to shoot a crossbow now and again, and his name is William Tell. And he even says in the episode, I'm named after him. I'm not the actual William Tell. Fair enough. Okay, you've set the scene there. So reception, and as for influence, it has none. Now, Cloud9 go on to do some more influential shows. This isn't one of them. This is just one of their back catalogue. So I gave this a 4. And that's only because I found it quite fascinating that the chap who set it all up had a number 1 hit with a song that I'd heard of and would never have put those two things together. So for curiosity value alone, it got that. But other than that, 4 is what I gave it. What about you?
Yeah, I've got nothing much more to add to that. Again, this is another show that's just lost to the sands of time. I don't really remember it. I mean, I'm sort of looking at the Cloud9 stuff, and maybe that's its legacy, isn't it? That it allowed them to make some other shows like you said, The Tribe. Weirdly, though, that they made The Tribe. I'm just reading the sort of synopsis of that. It's a group of young adults struggle to survive in a world where all the adults have been killed by a mysterious virus. Okay, then they
popular
also
show.
Yeah, that's what it says. That's on the Cloud9.
Yeah, that was
on
a popular
IMDb.
show. Yeah,
yeah, but then they've also got a show. Did they do a sequel called The New Tomorrow? Because
probably.
The synopsis for that, which came 2 years later, was after all adult life has been eliminated from planet Earth due to a deadly virus, the world's youth are left to survive by their own means, methods, and rules.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a sequel? I don't know. I mean, and then they did something called Revelations. I don't know. There's not much to say about this because, like you said, it never kickstarted anything. It didn't do anything. It's not really particularly well remembered. I've never heard of it. I don't think it's syndicated particularly well. Maybe it did, but it never. I don't know if it ever made it over here.
Europe, maybe. I don't remember seeing it, but it might have been on some late night thing.
I don't. I think the one thing I would say with this, and maybe you could take this as a legacy of this, and this is the people that you have listed throughout this episode,
yes,
and what they've gone to work on. So basically. Yes. They've all gone to work at Weta, or they've gone to work at what's Pete Jackson's production company called? I'm not quite sure. Wingnut. They've either gone to work at Wingnut or Weta, and so maybe there's your legacy for this. That those people got some grounding in for this. And I originally gave it a 2, but thinking upon that, I'd probably up that to a 4 because of the concept that the people who made this, and I wasn't aware of those links that you were saying, like, the guy who did the set design worked on The Hobbit, and he worked on Two Towers, and he worked on this, and the guy who did that worked on this, and they go, okay, right, well, if this show helped those people get a leg into the industry and then go make those amazing films, well, I mean, The Hobbit's not amazing, but The Hobbit's still good fun, then I would say that that's quite a bit of influence or a bit of legacy.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
So it's whereas Conan seems to be worked on a lot of people who had done a lot of things beforehand, didn't really go on to do much from it. Ralph Muller maybe sort of thing with a few, but he never, he's worked on loads. Well, but the production people behind this went on to shape a lot of cinema. Yeah, in some ways.
And actually, because it was directed by a guy called Peter Sharp, William Tell, and he's a New Zealander anyway. So I think. And he actually had he did a lot of his Australian TV. So he directed episodes of Prison Cell Blockade, Sons and Daughters. He did about 60 episodes of that, and Home and Away. So you can sort of see how the direction came to be as it is. But the reason I mention that is because during this time, New Zealand was going through a bit of a renaissance in terms of its film and TV industry, thanks to people like Peter Jackson and things like that. Yeah. And so I think that perhaps this is also, like you said, it's a career boost. There's a lot of these sort of, seasoned TV directors, TV producers, writers. The writer for this had written episodes of The Avengers and Doctor Who. The producer produced Spit and Image. There's people who've got the production experience, letting people who have got less experience really run with some of the things. And so maybe that is a legacy that, like you say, this was a really great sort of jumping board for some talent. And if it did that, then maybe that is the legacy that perhaps the missing. So maybe I'd agree. I mean, I gave it a 4. I think I'd stick. Maybe give it a 5. But
I'd stick with a 4 because I don't think it's much beyond that. But
yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's 4 because of its influence. It didn't really have much of an influence on anything else, but it certainly did boost. Certain people went on to work on some amazing things, and probably still do. So fair play.
There you go.
Fair play. Well, there we are. Final scores are in. We've tallied them up. And goodness me, it doesn't look very good for William Tell. So William Tell's definitely had his meat stolen by Conan, by the look of that.
He really
has.
has.
So overall, Conan scored a whopping 55. which isn't bad, is it? That's pretty good. Quite high scores. Most of the things. Dropping a little bit over its influence. William Tell, though, 38. Stinks a bit. Took a bit of a pounding because it's not really very interesting. It's not really about anything. It's not lit for anything. The music's kind of forgetful, and it's a bit of forgetting 16 episodes and nothing. But I suppose maybe on some syndicated channel and you probably find it on when you'll go to a hotel somewhere in the middle of nowhere and you put the TV and the one channel that operates will have that on it.
Yeah, maybe.
So it's commiserations then to William Tell. Sorry, you're going to have to shoot a few more apples. And fair play to Conan, once again, proving that he is, indestructible, wields a big sword, got a big weapon, and
packs his meat. Packs a good slab of meat.
And it's proving to everyone that you can still wear fur underpants and be effective.
Absolutely.
Even with a sword.
Absolutely. Yeah, even though William Tell has a Spider-Man arrow.
He does have a Spider-Man arrow. For no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, I'm glad Conan beat William Tell, I have to say, because I was hoping that would happen. You never really know till we do these things. Now, I have to go and say, if you do feel that, we'll put the links to these shows. If you're really feeling like you want to, we strongly recommend that you maybe take a trip down to have a watch of Conan, because you might find something in that. I'd maybe avoid William Tell unless you really want to, really feeling kind of like you need to do this. But okay, if you do, you do. There's only 16 episodes. Maybe that's enough. You'll probably had enough by the first one.
Yeah, probably.
So that's it. We declare in the Battle of the Pirates episode 6, the winner is Conan the Adventurer.
Woo.
Well, there we go.
Well done, Conan.
Well done, Conan. Well done. That is what is best in life, I'm sure.
It is. He's big and well grown.
He is proven to be very big and exceedingly well grown. And also, women seem to want his children after stealing his meat. And that's all we need to know about
within
that.
3 scenes. But
so well, I've learned things.
It is after she gets knocked on the head.
It is. I mean, I've learned things in these shows. I noticed that Conan is not foot backward about coming forward about how he feels about people's, whether they've eaten or not, and that's how he judges most people. You look fine to me. And William Tell seems to rely heavily on mind melding with his dog to find anything, which I don't know. Is that kind of a bit mean? At least his dog's still traumatized from seeing his parents burned to death. Anyway, on that bombshell, we now have a winner, and it just behooves us to not conclude this particular thing and bring it all to a close. So all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. And if you're feeling a bit fruity, we do a sister podcast. This is the thing we do in between the other one. The big one, Zapped to the Past. And I'm sure you must have listened to one of the many episodes we've recorded of that. There's at least 167 of those. That's pretty exciting. So you can go back in time and go back over that. Was it 5 years we've been doing that one now?
6.
Well, 6 years where we've been battling through every Commodore 64 game that's features in the magazine Zap 64, of course, and we go through every single one of those as we do and are continuing to do that during this gap. If you like the sound of that, you can go and find that at zaptothepast.com, where you will also find all of our back catalogue of episodes of that, all of the information about all the other stuff that we do. You'll find this podcast as well, because, of course, we put it all in the same block of meat to make sure we keep Conan happy. And if you're feeling like that's something that you want to do, you can also find us in a whole bunch of other places. So you can go find us on Podbean, on Apple Podcasts, and all the usual places. If you Google Zap the Past, or if you Google About the Past, you'd be better off Googling Zap the Past. I think you can go and find us on there. If you, however, also want to support the Zap the Past mission, of which this is a part, you can do that by going to zapthepast.com/Patreon or patreon.com/Zap the Past. Yeah, patreon.com/Zap the Past.
Yeah.
You can go and do that. You can buy us a Ko-fi at ko-fi, is it .com/Zap the Past? Something like that.
Yeah,
is it Ko-fi, coffee? It's ko-fi, isn't it? Ko-fi. You can do that if you want to go and do that. That's nice. Always helps us. And there are, I think, 3 different variations of scale that you can do on the Patreon. But the best one, of course, is to pay for the full whack, which is about the price of a sandwich or maybe a pint of beer, maybe depending on what country you're in. And for that, you get access to the advert-free episodes and loads of bonus content when we do it and all sorts of other cool stuff. So go and have a butcher's at that and see what you think. Also, you can buy our merch at zapthepast.shop and you can go there and see your T-shirts. Now, we haven't got any Battle of the Pilots merch on there yet. That will appear, I think. So if it's something you're interested in, we'll put it on there. Yeah. Well, we'll do that. But remember, our patrons do get exclusive rates on our merch. So that's another reason to be a patron, because you get access to cooler, less expensive stuff. Not that it's pricey, because it's not. So, anything further to add, Adrian, to that before we depart?
Well, just obviously, this is our, the finale of our mid-season break. We're back next week as we start 1991. for the Commodore 64 game. So we've got our first episode of 1991 starting next week. I can't for the life of me remember what games we've got. So, it's just going to have to wait and find out. But that kicks off next week, and we are,
season 7, isn't it? Season 7 beginneth.
Season 7 begins. We will start to play the games reviewed in Zapped 64 for the Commodore 64, and that starts next week. So it all starts again. It all does. I feel like the giant
machine turns.
It's happening again. It's happening again.
Oh, it's happening. Quick, go mind meld with the dog, see if you can find a way out.
Absolutely.
Not that dog. Oh, it's the traumatized one. So on that bombshell, we'll say goodbye. And it's farewell. So I have been Graham Raddings.
And I have been Adrian Mills.
And you have been listening to Battle of the Pilots, episode 6. Now stop listening to this and go listen to Zapped to the Past, because there's loads of them. And we'll see you in the next episode of this at some point in the future. Goodbye. Thank you kindly for listening to the Battle of the Pilots podcast, brought to you by the team behind Zapped to the Past. We sincerely hope you enjoyed this feisty look and comedic dive, indeed an out-and-out dust-up, between 2 classic pilot episodes that have graced our TV screens from over the last 50 years. We will, of course, return with another exciting and no doubt challenging episode. Until then, you can download this podcast and others from the zappedtothepast.com website, as well as listen on all good podcasting apps such as Podbean, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, those kind of things. The Battle of the Pilots podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 studio. And please do remember, all opinions expressed throughout the podcast are those of the writers. Now, go and watch something new on TV. You never know. It could be the start of something brilliant.